All right. Welcome, everybody. Thanks for joining us today for our Fear and Courage Mindset Training with Daniel Fernandes. He's graciously jumped on board to host this workshop today. Daniel is a certified high performance coach as well as a Dayton entrepreneur. And so we felt this topic was very timely, but also something that you can take with you even, when we're not in the middle of a pandemic. So Daniel, I'll let you take it from here.
All right. Thanks, Audrey. I really appreciate, your willingness to help out to make this happen, as well as, Launch Dayton, Downtown Dayton on the Entrepreneur Center for putting this workshop together with me. I got some great stuff planned today, so I'm really excited to welcome everybody. Thanks for attending, everybody. I think you're going to get a lot out of today's workshop on fear and courage, and hopefully you'll be able to leave with a lot of valuable insights and some actions that you can take also. So I just wanted to, just engage everybody right away and ask you, to type into the chat, what inspired you to join the workshop today? Why are you here today? Just so I get a feel for, everybody's got different reasons. So if anybody would like to share why they're here today.
So for me, kind of the reason why I'm here is to be the best servant leader possible as a coach and leader to the team. I want to help them navigate the new normal and feel that they still have the psychological safety and to build up, give them tools to build up their courage to kind of handle all of this change, future change, and continue to strive to do better in what they do.
Awesome. Well, I think everybody on your team will hopefully benefit from this as well. So thank you for sharing. Argupta is your name, but I know that's probably not your first name, but thank you for sharing.
Yeah, Rahul. Thanks, Dave.
Rahul. Okay. Well, I appreciate you joining, Rahul. I also appreciate everybody else who's sharing in the chat there. Kate says, many things feel overwhelming. I love reorienting myself around courage. Kelly says, to help myself and my team get through this time. Ariel says, working with my clients who are small businesses to encourage them during a very stressful and uncertain time, business-wise. And Bonnie says, helping others cope. That's great. I love that. I think you're going to get some tools today that'll help you with that, with all those things. So welcome. Don't forget to grab a sheet of paper and a pen so we can get started with there's going to be some written exercises to do today that are going to be really cool. The goals for today for me are, I want us to see our fear in a new way. Whether it's our fear, you can proxy for the fear of your team or your customers. You guys have said, you want to help other people, which I really appreciate, that service-oriented mentality. I think we need a lot of that in our culture today. So I value you for that. So I want you to be able to see your fears in a new way, and also the fears of your teams, help them see it in a new way and gain some control over it. I want to teach and help us learn some new mental technologies, which basically means tools for your mind. So that we can also access our own courage faster. And I want everybody to leave today with some specific actions that we can each take soon in our lives. And hopefully we can get through this in just an hour. So don't forget to grab your sheet of paper and a pen. You can take notes on your computer if you like, if that's easier for you to. But I find writing it down really helps. I do want to encourage participation. I really appreciate Rahul for sharing today so far, and for all of you who are sharing on the chat. I want this to be a really safe space to share, to learn, to grow for all of us. And so it's really important that we're non-judgmental today. And everybody said, we want to help other people. We can help each other on this call right now. So remember, no judgment, because what's easy for you might not be easy for the next person. What's easy for you might not be easy for me. And so, just set a frame of kindness and compassion for today. And I would love for everybody to just participate fully in this, because everybody on this call will benefit from that, from your input and your sharing today. So put away your distractions. In fact, I'm going to put my phone on Do Not Disturb because I forgot to do that. There will be some discussion opportunities, so I'd like you to stay to the end to take advantage of those. And let's get started. So hopefully you have your pen and sheet of paper now. I want you to section off into 3 sections. There's an A section and a B section and a C section. And you're going to write different things in each of these sections. So I'm going to walk you through what to write down as we go through here, and hopefully we'll generate some really cool insights for you or for your teams during this time, as well as some actions. So I'm going to start out with somewhere positive. I really wanted to start this workshop in a very positive place, because when you're talking about fear, it's easy to get drawn into the darkness. So I really wanted to start to ask you guys about a time when you demonstrated courage. And before you share that, I actually would prefer that you write it down. So think of a time in your life when you demonstrated courage. And I want you to write this down in section A of your paper. It can be any size, any situation. And I want you to remember, courage, it's different for everyone. And it's different situation by situation for you. It could be recent, it could be a little while back, it could be long ago. As long as it's something that you are feeling. Sometimes courage is a first step. Sometimes it's a major move. Sometimes it's just a conversation. So just write that down in A. One example from my life of a story of courage was I had to rubber stamp something once when I used to work at GM a while back, back when I was in corporate. And I actually had a feeling that, just rubber stamping it might not be good because there might be hidden problems. So it was really hard for me to say, to somebody, actually, I really want to look into this more in detail before I rubber stamp it. People weren't happy about that, but I knew I needed to do it. And that was a small example of courage. So it can be something like that. I remember that really importantly because that set a pattern for me. So that one I can really feel. So as you're writing that down in A, I don't want you to share yet. What we're going to do is we're going to do a breakout room so that we can share with a partner. And there's a reason I want to do that. I think it'll be really interesting to see what comes out of the shares. So what you're going to do in this exercise, I'm going to assign you all into breakout rooms, and you're going to try to tell your courage story in just about a minute or less. Just try to summarize it. Whatever you wrote down in your A is your story of courage. Does everybody have that story written down yet? You can just put in the chat yes if you've got yours written down. Something from your past that is courageous that maybe inspires you. Great. People are saying yes. Okay, awesome. So I'm going to send you into a breakout room. Let's see if I can make this work. Breakout rooms. And what you're going to do in the breakout room is one person is going to start as the speaker, the storyteller, and one's going to be the listener. And the storyteller is going to just tell them their story of courage, just like I just did, really short. And then they can share, why that was inspiring to themselves. And what I want the listener to do is just listen. And at the end, I want the listener to ask them, what were your wisdom nuggets from that story? And the speaker can say, here's why that's important. And the little wisdom nuggets I want you to take from your own story. And then I want you to switch. So that whole thing should take place in about 2 minutes if you can, and then switch. And then the speaker becomes the listener, and you repeat it. So that now the speaker will now tell their story, and the listener will ask, what were your wisdom nuggets? And then get that speaker a chance to say what their wisdom nuggets are. I want you to write down your wisdom nuggets too on your A section as well. Is that clear to everybody? Get some nodding heads here. Got some yeses. All right. So here we go. I'm going to put you in breakout rooms, and go ahead. One person be the speaker, one person be the listener, and try this exercise and write down your wisdom nuggets after you share your story. Still got one more person. Oh, there we go. Okay. So the breakout room seemed to have worked that time. Can you guys still see the screen?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. All right. So hopefully that went really well for you. I'm really curious if you guys could just put into the chat, what were your wisdom nuggets from that exercise?
I want to double check with everyone real quick. We have been recording the webinars, so I'm recording these group sessions. If that's not okay, please let me know, and I can stop the recording. But I wanted to make sure everyone was aware that we were recording the main screen.
Yes, you should see a little recording button, recording icon there. If anybody would not like to be recorded, please put that in the chat right now, and Audrey will stop it. But this recording could also help other people as you share your courage and your fears. So I encourage you to express yourself today in a way that you feel good about too. Thank you, Audrey, for that reminder. All right, so let's put into the chat to continue on here. So some wisdom nuggets from your stories. Like what did you learn about your own courage or about your partner's courage in that exercise? put that in the chat for us, and then take a look at what other people are saying as well. So one from Bonnie.
I don't know why it says sometimes doing twice.
That's
It didn't
okay.
say that before I pushed send.
Sometimes doing something for your health is better for your health than security. So can you explain that, Bonnie, just briefly?
Yeah, so the story that I shared was me taking the plunge of getting out of a toxic workspace. Even though I wasn't going to have health insurance or a 401k or anything like that, it was something that I knew that I had to do.
Right, thank you. And so the wisdom nugget for you to take away from that is, if you were to rephrase it from what you just said.
Put yourself first.
Okay, so that's your wisdom nugget, right? Get yourself a little nugget there. So that's a great reminder for you when you have fear. That's a great wisdom nugget to turn to. I see other people are sharing now. Kelly, sometimes we don't see what we are doing as courageous. Yes, that is really true. Sometimes what comes easy to us, or sometimes it doesn't come easy to us, we don't realize is actually courage in action. So thank you for sharing that. Doing things you're afraid of, like public speaking. So that's a great nugget to sometimes you got to do things you're afraid of. From Kate, her nugget is be open to what the world has to offer, even if there's uncertainty. I love that. And Michelle says, if I want to continue to grow, I must expand my comfort zone and do something scary so I can grow. Love that. And Ariel says, take a leap of faith. I think I got everybody. All right. So these are great wisdom nuggets. I would encourage you to remember those for the rest of this exercise, because we're going to go forward here. So thank you for sharing that. I did want to share some examples of, when we asked people in the survey to define courage. I think I wrote this down on a previous slide, maybe. Yeah, I'll just share here. I had a little note here. A few definitions of courage that people shared in the survey were the following: confronting things that scare you, facing fear and doing it anyway, the discipline to persevere, even under the worst circumstances, standing up to what makes you fearful, recognizing fear and facing it as you feel uncomfortable, I think is what they were saying. So these are good. The ability to overcome what does not seem possible while in fear. And that's a really important one. Fear makes us think things are impossible. And so I want to dive into fear. So thank you everybody for your comments. These are great. I'm sure that other people are reading these and like, oh yeah, this is really good stuff. So write down as many of other people's nuggets as you want. They're totally up for stealing. I don't think anybody's going to mind. So now that you have all that stuff written down in A, I want to move to B, and we're going to talk a little bit more about the survey. So some of the data from the survey showed that a lot of people, when they talk about what they're afraid of, they mentioned a lot of like big amorphous things, which are like COVID-19. Well, that's just a really like big amorphous thing that, it can seem so powerful and so strong because, it's not very specific as to how it applies to our life. It's hard to see what actions we can take, right? COVID-19, oh man. But what about, where does it fit into me? What actions can I take? What changes can I make for me? It's much more powerful to look at, the personal sphere that you have in front of you, rather than look at this giant thing that is not really, how do you address COVID-19? So one thing that's really helpful is to break it into like little smaller chunks of what it means to you. So if you have a fear like that that's paralyzing you, you really need to bring it back to something you can take action or take control over, because paralyzing means you don't have control, which means this fear is not very clearly defined to you. And that's one of fear's powers. It swims in your head. And one of the things we're doing today is we're going to express them, because when you get it out of your head, when you say it to somebody, or when you write it down, it changes as you express it. That's one of the cool things about fear. As you express it, it changes. So I think also the survey showed that 2/3 of people on the survey, like the vast majority of people, said, I know what I need to do, but I'm letting fear or procrastination or distraction stop me. And so I believe distraction and procrastination are also subtle symptoms of fear. So basically they're letting fear stop them even though they know what they need to do. So what I want people for this next exercise is to take something they're afraid of doing or changing. So not don't take COVID-19 as a thing that we want to work on. Like, I want you to think about something that you know that you need to do or change for yourself, but you're afraid of doing that. Does that make sense to everybody? Am I being clear here? So if you have any questions, let me know in the chat. But if not, then go ahead and write into B the thing that you're afraid of doing, or the way in which you're afraid of changing, or the action you're afraid of taking. All right? Because most people said that they knew what they needed to do, and they're just fear of stopping them. For me, one of the things that I would write down here for me is, I knew that I needed to reach out and support people during this time. I didn't know. I was afraid to put this webinar on, but me and Audrey worked together on making that possible. And when I talked to Audrey about it, yeah, there was some fear there for sure, but I was able to observe my fear. I talked to Kate about it too, and just talking about doing it made the fear change and get easier to understand. So that's my example. So something but I want you to look at something that you need to do now, not something you've already done. All right, so if everybody's got it, if you would like to share this in the chat too, you're more than welcome to share your fear with the group here in the chat, so people kind of know. And this is another thing about fear I want to share is when you share it with other people, what the thing that you want to do is what you're afraid of, all of a sudden that thing becomes a little bit easier. So that's why I want to encourage you to take the thing that you're afraid of doing or changing and share it with anybody that you can. And chat is a great safe place for us to do that, if you'd like to, because I think as you do that, it might change. Solo travel. Okay. All right. So it sounds like this is something that you want to do. Might be a little challenging right now, especially, but I think you mean generally, right? Okay. Thank you for sharing that. Audrey, being in charge. So Audrey, I want people to make this really specific. So being in charge is sort of a concept. Is there something that means to you that you'd be doing? Like, do you mean leading?
Yeah, speaking on behalf of, not me.
Okay. Okay, so that's your thing. So what I want people to know about what they're writing down here, it should be something that a little bit about what that looks like, but maybe you're afraid to do it. Okay, Michelle. Recognizing my procrastination is really fear, and I 100% agree with that. It's usually fear. I have a health coaching certification and I want to launch that. Social media platforms and regular posting. So this is sort of things in your business that you want to do. So I'd encourage you to pick one thing that you can get your arms around right now in this exercise. So maybe pick the most important piece of that whole giant thing that you just shared. And so what is the most important thing that you want to do that you have fear around doing? And that's what you should be writing down in your B. And thank you for sharing that, because I hope this helps other people. And that's why it's helpful to share right now, because maybe we can help you get a handle on some of the things that you really want to do. And if there's any questions, please ask. Keeping myself a priority. Okay, so with Kelly, I would like to ask Kelly, what does that look like? Do you know what that looks like to keep yourself a priority? What does that mean? Is there something specific that we can get about this?
I often find that I do not keep my promises and my priorities to myself or for myself. I make sure that they get done for everyone else that needs that from me, but I don't always keep my promises to me, and keeping myself first instead of putting others first.
Wow, thank you for sharing. I totally relate to that, and I'm sure many people on this call relate to that based on our survey answers too I'm interpreting right now. You're not alone in that for sure. And so I guess what would be like one action that you could take that would put yourself first, that would keep a promise to yourself? Where could you start with that?
actually not breaking a promise to myself. I don't know. I need to think on that for a minute.
Yeah, take a moment and do think about that, because when you're describing it, you probably had some ideas coming in your head, and honestly, it could be a small promise that you want to keep to yourself.
Mm-hmm.
So that would be an action. Like I'm afraid to make this promise to myself because like I don't know if I'm going to be able to do it, right? And so whatever the action that we're afraid of doing, Kelly, that's a great example, by the way. But I want you to try and get specific with a thing that you could do that you're afraid of doing. So like if it's a specific promise that you want to make to yourself, and it could be just like a one-time thing. It doesn't have to be like I promise to like do something every day for the rest of my life. That's a little too huge and amorphous, right? So like maybe pick the one thing that this week or tomorrow that you could do. That's an action you could take specifically. Does that make sense?
I would say honoring my time blocking.
Okay, so is there one block of time, just one block of time that you could honor tomorrow?
Yes.
Okay, so that's the one I want you to write down right now. So get really, what we're doing right now is we're getting really specific with our fears, because when fear is big, it's like, oh, I don't keep promises to myself. I'm really afraid that I won't be able to. Well, that's big and amorphous. Let's get specific. Let's find one piece of that we can attack, because we're not going to solve all their ultimate fears today, but we are going to, make a big dent in some of them. So, so write down that one, the one thing that you want to block time for. And so that'll be your B, the action that you're afraid of doing or the way in which you're afraid of changing. But try to be specific and relate it to, I would say, the upcoming time, sometime this coming week.
Okay.
All right. If everybody's got one of those, if anybody does not have one, let me know and I'll just pause there to help you get one. All right, so I'm going to continue forward here. And hopefully those examples were really instructive for people to get more specific and manageable with their action. So now I'm going to talk about whatever your fear you had. It might land in one of the following categories. So I'm going to share some categories with you. And I want you to think about your particular fear, the action that you're considering, and which category it lands under, okay? So here we go. There's 3 fear categories I want to talk about. 1 is loss fear, 2 is process fear, and 3 is outcome fear. I'm going to explain what each of these are. A loss fear is like if I go do this thing that I'm considering, or taking this action that I'm afraid of doing, I might lose something that's really important to me. So maybe, my example is I was afraid to talk to my boss about the struggle on a project when I was back in corporate. Because I didn't want to get that project taken away. I was afraid of losing the project because I was telling my boss I'm having trouble with it. So that was a loss fear that was preventing me from having that conversation that I knew I needed to have. That makes sense. So then I'm going to continue on the next one. If this is your fear, maybe put that in the chat. Yes, a loss fear for me. And I'm going to continue on with the next one. If you're seeing your fear in this one, that you're going to lose something as a result of doing the thing that you're considering. The second category is process fear. And if this is you, you can put it in the chat too. This one is like, oh, this is going to be so hard for me to do this. Like the process is going to be really difficult. I don't know if I can handle what it's going to mean for me to start this action, to do this. It's going to be, maybe I'm not strong enough. So I'm just afraid to do this thing because it's going to be difficult. Okay. So that's process fear. And, example for me was, when I was so I was overweight some time back and I wanted to change my diet. And I knew what I needed to do, but I, didn't want to start on a new plan because I was just afraid that it was going to be too hard for me. Like I didn't think I had the strength to maintain it. And, there's a little bit of loss fear in there too, because I felt like I was going to lose some freedom around my food choices. So like these are 2 fears that were keeping me stuck on actually taking action towards my diet. So, so I didn't try because these fears were overwhelming me. Especially the process fear on that one. Like, oh yeah, it's gonna be so hard for me. The third one is outcome. So if that's you, process, type process into the chat if that's you on your fear. Third one's an outcome fear. So if your fear is an outcome fear, then you feel like, I'm gonna do this thing, it's just not gonna be better in the end. Like, what if it's worse? At the end is what this fear is all about. So like, I'm gonna take my action and it's just not gonna lead to a better outcome. That's another fear that keeps us stuck. So those are the 3 fear categories. So All right, Kate is saying, hers is an outcome fear. So a lot of these are the three main categories of fear. Audrey says process for her. Bonnie says all three. Okay, great. Like a lot of fears, like I said, can hit multiple categories. I would like you to consider which one is your primary fear for this. So like I'm gonna do a little poll here. If you guys, if I can figure out how to do the poll, where do the polls go? There it is, polls. Okay. All right, I'm gonna launch this poll. And which one? So this is, I want you to think about which one's your primary, not like all necessarily all. If it's all three, one of them probably jumps at you a little more. So if everybody could just fill in their poll, take your votes, and see what comes in. Oh, it's cool to see these results changing. Can you guys see the results changing, or is it just me? All right. Maybe I'll pull this over to the share screen. Can you guys see that? No, you can't see. Okay, so Zoom won't share the poll results, but I'll share them here. Okay, so 27% of people were a loss fear, 36% were a process fear, 55% were an outcome fear, and 9% were unsure. So that's probably one person. So 6 people said outcome, 4 people said process, 3 said loss, and 1 said unsure. Somebody is saying, Michelle says, I think I wonder if the diversion to focus on that is going to be worth it. So I think that, yeah, it sounds like that's an outcome fear, Michelle. So it's like, oh, I'm going to do all this work on my business and it might not be better on the other side, right? Then that fear will stop you from doing anything, right?
Well, and two, it's like putting my focus on that takes my focus off something else that's a big priority to me too. So it's like, is it worth it to go there?
Yeah, that's a prioritization.
And maybe have loss over here. It's maybe loss over here where I've already got my attention, and outcome on the other side. Yeah.
Yeah, so you got a little bit of both, but it sounds like the primary might have been outcome, and there's also some loss fear going on, like my example, right? Okay, yeah, great. So there's also a prioritization question, but we won't get into that right now. But hopefully we can address any category that your fear falls under with the next slide. Does anybody have any questions at this point, or is this pretty clear? I know I went through it pretty fast. All right. No questions so far. Okay, so it sounds like people are keeping up with this. That's great. All right, so let's go to the next slide and talk about how do we get over these different fears, right? So, so with the loss fear, the big question that your fear is asking you is, what could I lose? What could I lose? What could I lose? That's what's reverberating in your head. So really simple way to figure out how to short circuit that fear is to ask a different question, which is, what could I gain? And so if you're focused on what you're losing, that's just where your attention is going right now. What about what you could gain? Because like you can ask yourself either question. It's pretty arbitrary. Your fear wants to ask you the loss question because it wants to keep you stuck, because fear is all about keeping us safe. And perceived safety is like, don't change anything. So, so instead of asking yourself, what could you lose? What could you gain? So if your fear is in the loss category at all, ask yourself what you could gain instead of what you could lose, and maybe write something down there if you need to remind yourself of what you could gain. And then I'm going to go to the process category. This category is, how could this be hard? Anybody have any ideas on how to flip this question?
How could this be easy?
Yeah, that's a great flip. So for process, the fear wants your thinking to be, how is this going to be hard? How's this going to be difficult? How's this going to be impossible? How's this going to be horrible? And a flip question, not only how could this be easy, but how could this be fun or interesting or social or something positive, right? Something enjoyable is a good word to use here. Because some things are going to be hard in some ways, but they're going to be easy in other ways. So the aspects of your action that you're considering, how hard, so it was going to be really hard for me to change my diet, sure. But then when I thought about it, what if I had some people working on this with me? What if I had a group? Maybe that could be more social or interesting. Or maybe it could be maybe I could enjoy learning how to change my habits, and learning about nutrition. There's enjoyable pieces about that. So reframing that is possible if you flip this question. So don't stay with what your fear wants you to think, which is, how could this be hard, but go where your courage may want you to think, which is, how could this be fun? Or how could this be something enjoyable? Yeah. Kate's got it there. Yep, that's exactly right. And the outcome one, so an example of an outcome, you know, when my wife, Kate, who's on the call right now, wanted to start a business, her fear was, what if it fails, right? What if the outcome is worse? And so what is the flip question you could ask yourself if that's what your fear is telling you? What if the outcome is worse? What is the flip question? Any guesses?
What could be better?
Yeah. What if it's better, right? How could it be better, right? Because your fear wants to tell you, well, it could be worse. What if it could be worse? You know, don't do anything because it could be worse. Let's stay safe. Let's not do anything. But what if it could be better? Well, all of a sudden you're looking somewhere else. So I want you to notice how fear keeps our attention focused on a negative framing, whereas courage does the opposite. So I want people to think about, what is the fear asking me right now that I'm answering with, like, oh, the answer is it's going to be worse. Well, you know, the fear is like, how could it be worse? So we're always answering the questions that are being posed in our head. So just change the question is kind of what I'm saying. All right. So at this point, where are we at? We're on time. So if anybody would like to share their particular fear, whether it's loss, process, or outcome, and how this question flip shifted their perception here, or if they're having trouble doing that, you know, if you'd like to share, we can talk through that. Or anybody could share their particular flip. That might be interesting for people to hear, to learn from.
So my fear that I put on there is solo travel. And obviously, what could I lose? Myself, could get jumped, who knows? But really, I feel like my loss is more my parents' trust. Like, they are more afraid for me doing a solo trip than I am. But obviously the gain is so much better to be able to have that experience.
Okay, so your loss was parents' trust. Actually, so it's interesting what comes up. It's not what we might initially expect to come up. So I think that's a great example, Bonnie. So like, I want to do a solo travel, but I'm not doing it because I'm afraid that I'm going to lose my parents' trust. But then if I flip it again, what could I gain? And you said what you gain is?
The experience in general.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, and so that's
new.
usually, right? Say that again, Bonnie.
Traveling to someplace new.
Right, you cut out. Say it again.
Traveling to someplace new.
Okay, so the experience of having to travel somewhere new, and you said that was more important than the potential to lose your parents' trust.
Yeah, because they got to be wrong, right?
Well, this is such a good example, because like, you already knew that you wanted to do solo travel. There's something in you that's calling you to do that, and so you've now identified one of the things that's resisting it, and you got back in touch with the reasons why it matters for you. So that's another part of what we're doing here. We're identifying and looking at the fear for what it actually is, not this amorphous thing in our heads that is just we're not examined, right? So that was really good, Bonnie. Thank you. Now, was that flip helpful for you?
It's more of, I guess, revisiting the conversation, because it always comes up when we go on like family trips, and the solution for them is, oh, well, I'm sure so-and-so would go there with you. And so just kind of taking that plunge to make the decision, and maybe do something small, like driving to Pittsburgh for a day, just to kind of lower that barrier of entry.
Right. Great. So now what you're doing is you're coming up with creative ways to move this forward, which I love. That's another thing you can do too. If your initial action was kind of vague, you can now get a little more specific. So you've got some new ideas. How can I take at least one step forward? Which I love that. That's super important. If we're getting stuck to like, what's one tiny step I could take to go forward? Right? Great. Awesome. Good for you. Anybody else would like to share? Go ahead.
So it's Mandy. Oops.
Hi, Mandy.
Sorry, I don't have my video going because I'm actually working.
No worries.
So some of you who know me will probably find this odd, but actually having my small business take off and be my full-time job is I've realized over the past few months is actually a really big fear for me. You know, always having a security of, you know, a full-time job somewhere. And then I was laid off late November last year. So, but I made a promise to myself that I wouldn't just accept any job that came through, because I did that 4 years ago when I was laid off. And it ended up working out well with the job I got laid off recently, but I wasn't going to settle again. And it's weird. It's working out. It's been a hard 4 months. It's been a lot of self-discovery, and realizing that in many ways I've been blocking myself from growing the business. And so I'm one of the few people that the virus is actually helping right now. My business is booming. And realizing that I do have a viable product. People believe in me and my product. And if I can do that too, it will work. And just have to do that. So for me, it's the outcome fear. It's trusting.
So what's the outcome? So first of all, what's the action that you know you want to do, but that you're afraid of doing, or the way in which you need to change that you're afraid of changing?
Little things like updating my website, making my SEO better. You know, I've been procrastinating. I haven't done it because, I've been busy. I'll do it later.
Okay, so if it's a procrastination thing, there's a fear there, and so you're identifying the fear as an outcome fear, and so you think the outcome is going to be worse.
Right.
In what ways is it going to be worse? Just so I'm clear.
And that's the thing. It won't be worse, and I know it won't be worse, but it's
okay.
The
so
fear.
How is it going to be better? Is the question you're saying,
exactly. Right? It will be a ton better. You know.
Why? Well, tell me how it's going to be better.
I'll be getting more orders. I'll be happier. You know, I will be doing what I love. So that's how it will be better.
Okay.
So.
Great. So do you feel a little more committed to your action now?
Yes.
Awesome. So when are you going to do that?
I actually have a meeting at 3:00 today to talk to somebody.
Okay. So you already have that plan. Good for you.
Yep.
Okay. So I would love for you to do this exercise for something that you are also afraid to do, that you don't already have actions towards yet. So that's a great step. Maybe there's another part of this that comes next that you're afraid to do. Consider like the next piece of that and keep on running this exercise of what if it's worse? What if it's better? Because that's going to be useful to you. And that's a great example of a way to shift your thinking around it.
Yeah, and I'm sure there will be things that come out of this meeting at 3:00 that I'll be afraid to do.
Yeah, exactly.
So I'll just keep doing it.
Yeah, so make sure you write down what if it's better. Write down some of your better answers on near your B there on your sheet, so that you can remind yourself after this meeting. You just look back at your sheet and be like, oh yeah, it's going to be better. Remind yourself. And so half the battle, honestly, is just constantly reminding ourselves of the gain, the fun, the better, whatever it is for us. Because when we get out of touch with those reminders, then fear takes more attention from our mindset. So thank you for sharing, Mandy. All right, I'm going to continue forward here. We got one section left to go, and we're right on time, actually, shockingly. So far we've done two things. We've done our courage story and we've done identifying and categorizing our fear. So that you have two little tools there. One is get your wisdom nuggets out, and two is get your fears categorized. So what I want to do next is sort of come up with a new action that might be the thing you were afraid of, or might be a piece of that, or might be the next, what is the next step for you? And it might be the thing you identified already, if it's specific and clear enough, but C is gonna be your courage action. So what are you gonna do next? Basically you take your B, what you fear, and your fear categorization, you flip it, and then you add your A, which is your courage story, and your wisdom nuggets, which will help you create your courage action. So this is gonna be one thing that you're gonna do after this workshop that you're gonna take away with you that you had previously been hesitating on doing, whether it's procrastinating or just afraid of. So write that down in C. Does everybody have their action that they're going to take? Hopefully this is something new that you didn't previously, think you were going to do as quickly. And one of the important things is to do it soon. So I want this to be something you're going to do in the next, hopefully today, maybe tomorrow, maybe this weekend, ideally. And it could be as simple as picking up the phone and calling somebody that you need to talk to. It could be as simple as, sitting down and writing out the thing. Maybe, we're talking about Kelly's block time. Maybe it's as simple as doing that block time and writing out what she's going to do for that block time. So once you've got your action, just let me know in the chat. You can either tell me what your action is or and I'm going to ask anybody if they'd like to share. So we're coming on the end here. We got about 5 minutes left. And I would like to ask a couple of things. One is we're going to do a little, if you'd like to share, I would like to ask you guys to let me know what you found most valuable today in our session together. So just, if you could, for me, just type that in the chat, what you found most valuable in our workshop today. Bonnie says what was most valuable was identifying the type of fear. Audrey says identifying fear categories. Kelly says honoring my early morning time block for personal development, reading, movement, and meditation to prepare for my day. Michelle, ask better questions. How to turn around from negative to positive. Great. I love these. Vanessa says all of the above. All right, so, there's another one. Kate, identifying pearls of wisdom in our courageous actions from the past. Yeah, and you've hopefully written those down. So you've got, your A should show, your courage, it's a little deposit in your courage bank. Your B should show your fear is not as impossible to address as you thought maybe, and now you have some actions and see what you're gonna do. So this is a very simple formula, courage, fear, examination, and then action. What's your next tiny step? So that's another tool for you is the ABC. Anytime you feel paralyzed, give yourself an ABC, and you'll find maybe you're a little less paralyzed. The other thing I want you guys all to do when you're feeling paralyzed is to express what's going on. The longer you keep it in your head, the longer it has to shift your attention towards the negative. So if you express it, you write it down, or you tell somebody about it, or you have a conversation. That's really important, because then your fear will change and get simpler to understand and to act. Ben says, analyzing the fear of what's holding us back and transforming it into actionable courage. Love that, Ben. All right, so I have a little gift for everybody who's on the call today. And this is something during the time of COVID, I decided to offer any Dayton business leaders or professionals in Dayton free 30-minute coaching session with me, no strings attached. Just if you want to talk about anything we talked about today or something else, I'm offering that 30-minute coaching session. I've just posted in the chat if you guys want. I have a link here. I have to type this in. It will not cut and paste. And Kate, could you just test that link and make sure it works for me? That was manually typed in. So if you would like to have a further conversation with me, you're more than welcome to book that free 30-minute session on my calendar. And we'll just have a conversation. Somewhat similar to some of the conversations we've had today. They were a little short. And I'm also going to stay on a little longer today. If anybody would like to stay on and chat as a group or just, one-on-one, I can do some coaching for you if you like. On anything that came up today, or maybe something you haven't talked about yet. And I think for that, maybe Audrey stopped recording for that part. And,
I was gonna say, yeah, I'm gonna stop recording now. Thank you so much, Daniel, for leading this workshop. Thank you all for jumping in and joining us today. And then, yeah, I'm gonna stop the recording, and everyone's free to hang out and continue chatting from there.